Welcome to the podcast today. I'm Emily McLean. Now, dogs aren't just humanity's best friend, they're also assistance animals that help people with disability lead independent lives. Assistance animals include everything from dog guides who guide the steps of those with vision impairments to medical detection dogs, detecting early warning signs in individuals with epilepsy, for example. In short, these animals are highly trained to provide vital support in everyday life. And while these assistance animals are legally allowed in all taxi and rideshare vehicles, more often than not, drivers refuse to let these animals in illegally. Now, some drivers might be afraid of dogs, while others just don't want dog hair in their car. And despite this, when a driver refuses service to a passenger with an assistance animal, it's not only breaking the law, it's limiting the independence of those who rely on these animals. So in today's podcast, I'm joined by three wonderful guests who will share their lived experience on this topic. Firstly, I'm pleased to welcome Chris Edwards, the Director of Government Relations at Vision Australia. Chris, could you introduce yourself?
Hello, it's Chris Edwards. I'm totally blind myself. I have a seeing eye dog, Eva, and we at Vision Australia have this as a major issue that we hear from lots of clients about.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Jack Brady, a veteran and comedian, and their assistance dog Pepper, who isn't with us today. Please tell us a little about yourself, Jack.
Hi, my name's Jack, and my assistance dog Pepper is a non-standard assistance dog, let's call it that. She's a mind dog. She helps me with PTSD and blood pressure detection. She's also a greyhound, which is a bit unusual, part of a self-accreditation process.
Fantastic, a great breed. Next, I would like to introduce Brittany Watson and her seeing eye dog Kuma. Brittany is a Junior Recruitment Officer for Humanity Health Group. Welcome, Brittany. Could you tell everyone a little about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Brittany Watson. My seeing eye dog is Kuma. We've been working full-time together for about 2.5 years. She's been a great asset to my life, helping me get to and from work, as I am only vision impaired for about 8 years. So she's been a great, not only guide dog, but assistance for me as well, just day to day.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. Now let's dive into the all too common issue of refusal in CPVs. Now, we did a state of the industry report that noted that 1 in 10 passengers have been refused a ride due to their disability. However, for passengers with assistance animals, this number is reported to be significantly higher, and we know some passengers have been refused service by drivers over 20 times in the space of 12 months. Now, this can be incredibly frustrating, but it also can be humiliating. Chris, I'd like to begin with you. Could you shed some light on this issue of drivers rejecting assistance animals and perhaps share some of your experiences?
Yeah, it's such a common issue. The people that use seeing eye dogs and guide dogs, I don't know of anybody that hasn't had a refusal. Believe it or not, my last refusal was today, coming here to this session. And in this case, it was just a driver simply seeing the dog and myself walking up to the vehicle at home and driving off. And so we have, a number of different scenarios that happen to people, including, arguments with drivers, trying to convince them to come, those drivers that simply drive off, and those drivers that are, just blatantly discriminatory to all people who use assistance dogs. But commonly, the reason is that there's a misunderstanding that it's a pet. They don't recognise that it is a registered assistance animal, and it has those requirements that is deemed under the law, including a behaviour test, the cleanliness, and so I think a lot of the drivers just don't understand what an assistance dog is and what the rights of someone who's using assistance dog can go anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Because Brittany, you had the same experience this morning too, didn't you?
Yes, I did get in the Uber, but I had to have somebody else with me to argue for me because me saying it myself was not enough for them. And they was like, no, it has to be Uber Pet. That was the answer I got.
Yeah, yeah. We're seeing this quite a lot, particularly around the Uber Pet piece. And Jack, have you had experience with this as well?
Yeah, that's been the most frequent one. And I think, again, because I think there's a perception that all assistance dogs are one breed. And a lot of the Mine Dog Australia are a variety of breeds. So even though that she wears a fluorescent yellow vest that's quite big, it would be, oh no, you should get Uber Pet. And I would say, actually, no, I'm not paying more for a service that, you know, you're not going to economically disadvantage me as well because this dog is accredited under Australian law. And I'm quite assertive with that sort of thing.
Yep.
And but I've had the same thing with refusals with them seeing you by the side of the road and just driving off too. Yeah. But yeah, the Uber Pet things happen to me, I can count more than a dozen times.
Yeah, wow. It's big. It's a really big issue.
And you know, my dog's retiring at the moment and I'm looking at another dog again in the future. Yeah. And we're using Uber less and I think my stress levels have dropped down because I'm not feeling quite so stressed, which also for me, when this dog is for PTSD and anxiety and blood pressure related to that, you know, standing by the side of the road wondering whether you're going to be refused, how many times you're going to be refused, how much longer it's going to take you to get to a comedy gig that you have to be there for a certain time, puts my blood pressure up.
Which leads us into our sort of next question I'd love to ask you all as well. I mean, the impact of being refused isn't just you were refused and it's frustrating. It has a real life impact on your life. And let's start with you, Brittany. What kind of, you know, impacts have you seen from being refused? Are you late for appointments? And
again, you're late day to day to work, but again, a lot of people are understanding when you are late. It's more the emotional state that it takes. I do not get an Uber with Kuma unless I have somebody with me, whether that's to hold the door open, to get in the car first before I get in, to stand up for me, because sometimes when you're by yourself, they just will. I've had an Uber drive off with one foot in the car and nearly had it close on my foot.
You had one foot in the car
and they drove off. Yeah, because I was trying to stand up for myself. I'm like, no, you can't refuse me. So go to step in. And because of that, she gave me my independence, but yet they're taking my independence away by refusing her, because I will leave her at home to get an Uber to go somewhere, then actually argue against it.
Wow, that's major. What about for you, Chris? What's the impact of drivers refusing you a ride?
Yeah, I think it's really important that this isn't just about Ubers. It's about the same thing happens with taxi drivers as well. And I think the challenge is yes, it's the practical aspects of being late, but that emotional anxiety of when you're booking a vehicle going, okay, am I going to be accepted or not? And that cumulative effect of being refused actually does create that level of anxiety each time you book that really starts limiting, do I really want to catch a rideshare vehicle or a taxi, because it's becoming too frustrating. And so every time I think that we're making progress and I haven't had a refusal for say 4 weeks, there'll be times where I'll get 3 refusals for 1 booking, and by that stage, that level of frustration and anxiety and it does really impact on you, and think it highlights that you have a disability, whereas most of the time I think I don't have a disability. I just get on with life.
I also want to move on now to, I think we need to touch on the myths that I think a lot of these drivers have around assistance animals. And I'd like to start with you, Jack. I know you mentioned one before around the fact that drivers believe assistance animals or seeing eye dogs are commonly Labradors.
Yeah, one breed.
So you've got a greyhound.
Yeah, and the self-accreditation process that I followed for Mine Dog, you still work with dog trainers and you do it over a long time period. But a lot of people will self-accredit their own dogs or a rescue or a pup, start themselves. It's a very long process with the same standards. And particularly with psychiatric assistance dogs, there's specific tasks that these dogs do for us, just like there is, with other assistance dogs. But yeah, the concept that, something like a greyhound who is very in tune to me and who knows when my blood pressure is starting to rise will boop me and will help with my anxiety by taking me away from crowds when I'm walking down a city street. It's sort of going, okay, there's too many people here, you're going to have a PTSD reaction, those sort of things. But yeah, they're like, this can't be an assistance dog.
Yeah.
But also, the thing I want to talk about too is like, the dog will shed hair. It's like, greyhounds are low shed dogs. And it's kind of like, okay, that shouldn't matter anyway. But I think that the concepts, and now there is an increasing number of assistance dogs, and there's an accreditation process for a reason, clearly, because we don't want people abusing that.
Of course.
But the whole idea that it's,
I
used to get a lot of questions about, is it really an assistance dog?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
What does it do for you? Okay. I know there are people in the disability community who have got some great comebacks for this. I won't say them because they're theirs. But, very personal questions all of a sudden.
Yes, very
too,
much
that,
so.
That I would hope they don't ask other people.
Yeah. And do assistance animals like the one that you have, are they identifiable in any other way?
Yeah. Mine dogs that I'm with, they have a bright yellow vest that has assistance animal all over it. Okay. It's quite visible.
Is it mandatory for them to wear that vest?
Yes, for my accreditation process, yeah.
Okay, great. And I know that you are a comedian as well, and I know this is a very serious topic. Do you ever bring this into any of your comedy? Yeah?
Well, I've actually used Pepper on stage once a few years ago, and I had a conversation with her about how incredible the humans in the room were for doing everyday tasks. So it's like, look at that human doing that. Did you know they could do that? We used to do. She used to come to. She's retiring at the moment. She's got older. Yeah. But she used to come and just hang on the side of the stage or lie on the stage. She also knows when there's applause, it's time to leave.
Oh wow!
Yeah. When the whoop at the end and the big applause at the end, she's like, "Oh, we're gone now." She'll stand up and get off the stage. Yeah.
And Brittany, what about you? What are some myths you'd like to debunk around Kuma?
That she won't bite. I think it's the most common question when I get into a ride share is, she won't bite me, yeah? I'm like, I promise you, she will not bite you. She gets, trampled on and stood on in, the public, and she just turns around and she's like, hey, that wasn't nice. So it never bites, never barks. Yeah. And I think a lot of it, which Chris, I'll get him to talk more about, is just we sign legal contracts when we get the dogs, that we have to keep them clean, we have to keep them groomed. So even with fur, you'll hardly ever get any in, even with the Labradors or the Golden Retrievers, because we have to keep them groomed to an inch of their life, basically.
Wow. So are you brushing them very regularly?
Daily.
Yep.
Also, for my house, I need it done daily as well. So definitely, they are very, very clean.
Yes.
So we have to legally do it.
Yeah.
So of course, we're going to keep it that way.
Yeah. Chris, could you expand on that a little bit? Because I don't think our drivers are quite aware of the extent in which these dogs need to be kept this clean and groomed.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's a number of really important things about dogs. One is that it's an obligation of the handler to ensure that their dog is clean, well groomed, and secondly, it behaves well. And so whilst some drivers might think pets will wander all over their car and wander in the back seat, what the dogs are trained to do is just sit in the footwell and actually not move. And they are incredibly well behaved. One of the things I commonly hear from drivers is their concern about the biting, and one of that is where they've come from in some of the countries where dogs have rabies and they have other diseases, and they are genuinely concerned about if something happens that they could be in trouble. These dogs are well vaccinated and don't carry the diseases like other dogs. And it's really important that the dog is well behaved, doesn't move, is clean, and actually the drivers that take the dogs actually come often say at the end of the trip that, oh, I didn't realise they were so well behaved. I'd take one any time now.
Wow. It's good to hear that, but unfortunately it takes a while to get to that point, it seems.
Yeah, it takes it takes that one trip to understand that these dogs aren't just a random pet that wander all over your car. They come in, they sit down, they don't move, and they for most part the driver wouldn't even know they're there.
So we're coming to the end, and I'd just like to give you all the opportunity to, maybe you'd like to impart some final words to drivers, or maybe you'd like to share something that we haven't covered. And I'll start with you, Jack. Anything you'd like to?
Just a recommitment to the idea that disabled people are not a burden on your service. We are providing you with income as well. We're customers like anyone else.
Yeah.
And our dogs are an extension of us. So, they're very important to our health and well-being, but also just to our own economy. I mean, I have a story where I was asked to pay an extra fee on top of the fare.
Wow.
And it was like, you're putting me and my family at risk because I now have to work for an extra amount of time to clean up after your dog, which again, as we've just heard, our dogs are exceptionally clean. And it was like, and there was, we also have jobs, we also have lives. These dogs allow us to do that work as well.
Yes.
So it is beneficial for both of us, for both parties, to be able to not be put at an economic disadvantage. And we're not trying to put anybody at an economic disadvantage.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And what about yourself, Brittany? Any final words?
It's just two drivers that moment in time where you forget about us in 30 seconds after that refusal, we're going to remember that for the rest of our time. It's going to give us anxiety for the rest of the day. It's going to give us anxiety for the rest of the time we want to get a ride share. It's not fair. It's unfair. And besides the fact that it is illegal, it's just you're putting someone through emotional distress. So just, please accept us.
Yeah. And yourself, Chris?
Yeah, my message is fairly simple. I need my dog to be able to live, and the dog provides me amazing independence in all aspects of life. And people and drivers have just got to recognise this is a legally responsible pet, assistance dog, and it is not a pet.
Yes. Well, thank you all for being here today. I really, really appreciated it, and appreciate your insights and sharing your experiences as well. So for CPV drivers, you get the chance to provide a service that enables people with disability or accessibility needs a chance to travel with confidence in a safe and inclusive environment. You have the power to help your community, the power to put a smile on your passengers' faces, and the power to make a difference. Thanks for listening today, everyone.